The first report came in at 0401 UTC, 40 seconds after the detonations. I was already at my station. I had been at my station for 18 months. The signal read, Outer Ring Station Caravel, hull integrity lost, cascade failure, all hands. Then perimeter post-dusk. Then Meridian Relay 11. Then Caro, the SAN, and DAL in a single burst that lasted 4 seconds before their transmitters went dark with them. By 0403, 14 of the 17 stations had checked in the only way they could. By 0407, the last 3 confirmed. 94,212 personnel. The Vorathi docking vessels logged as departing on routine resupply cycles had not departed. They had simply stopped moving inside the stations and waited for the exact second the compacts term ticked to its final hour. One Vorathi transmission reached Earth 8 minutes later. A single word in the common meridian frequency. Concluded. I pulled the message into my queue and sat with it for 3 seconds. Then I forwarded it to command with a flag I had designated 18 months earlier and never expected anyone to take seriously. Vindication, active. I had prepared that flag the same week I submitted my first analysis of the hullcracker signatures buried in the resupply manifests, anomalous mass readings, dense crystalline objects logged as mineral transport ballast in the routine cargo declarations. The analysis went up the chain. It was reviewed at 3 separate levels over the course of 11 days. The response from the Treaty Compliance Office had been measured and precise, insufficient grounds to jeopardize a 40-year accord. The resupply crates would not be inspected. The compact would continue on its stated terms. I had that letter framed above my terminal. Not from bitterness. From discipline. A reminder that my job was not to be believed on the first submission. My job was to be correct, and to be ready, and to have the second submission built before anyone asked for it. Operation Meridian was the second submission. It had been waiting in deep cover for 6 months, which was how long it had taken Admiral Verith to move 430 warships into staging position without alerting the Vorathi monitoring network to a build-up. I want to be precise about what that means, because precision is what separates grief from vengeance, and grief was what I carried at 0407 UTC when I read the final station report. 94,000 human beings, maintenance crews, supply officers, communication technicians, night shift medics, shift commanders, the junior analysts who ran the intake desks, and the 18-year-old clerks who had signed for the Vorathi resupply crates without knowing what they were signing for. Grief is the correct word. What I felt was not the hot variety of anger. Hot anger makes you imprecise, and imprecision was the one thing I could not afford. What I felt was the specific, cold weight of a thing I had identified and documented and been politely overruled about, and it had come to pass at the exact scale I had modeled, and 94,000 people were dead because the Treaty Compliance Office had found my evidence insufficient. That weight has a name. I do not use it loosely. I used it, properly and fully, for approximately 40 minutes. Then I set it down and pulled up the Meridian Armada pre-positioning log. Verith had received my vindication flag at 0404. By the time I pulled the log at 0409, she had already issued the activation sequence to all 3 dispersal clusters. 430 warships, staged under commercial transit registration across the outer reach, accumulated over 6 months in the window after Verith received my second submission and determined that being wrong about a threat was preferable to being unprepared for one, received their coordinates at 0411 UTC. The activation took 3 minutes and 14 seconds from Verith's initial signal to final acknowledgement from the farthest cluster. I watched each confirmation come in on the relay board, one after another, steady as a count. I did not give the order. That was not my function. My function was the intelligence that made the order possible. But Verith sent me a routing copy of the activation signal, which is not standard protocol, and I understood what she meant by the deviation. The Meridian Armada entered synchronized transit at 0417. 11 days to Vorathi space. 11 days was fast by the standards of an outer reach deployment, and it was fast by design. The staging positions had been chosen with that transit window as a hard constraint. Every hour the Armada spent in transit was an hour during which Vorathi space might respond, reposition, or receive additional assets. 11 days left them no time to do any of those things effectively. The 11 days that followed are the hardest portion of this account to describe, because nothing happens during a transit that makes for clear narration, and yet everything necessary was happening. That is the fundamental paradox of intelligence work. The decisive moment had already occurred 18 months earlier, when I filed the hullcracker analysis. Every action since, the The second analysis, the staging deployment, the activation, the transit now underway, was procedural consequence. I monitored fleet telemetry. I compiled casualty documentation from the 17 stations, 94,212 names, ages, assignments, next of kin designations, forwarded to Earth Civil Registry for processing. I drafted the formal intelligence postmortem, the document that would be read by the review board convening 6 weeks after the compact concluded. I had submitted versions of that document twice before and been told both times to moderate the language regarding the treaty compliance officer's handling of my first submission. I did not moderate the language this time. The board could redact whatever it chose. The file I submitted would be accurate. On day 3 of the transit, a Vorathi diplomatic vessel entered the Relay 7 corridor broadcasting a formal communication request on the standard command channel. The header metadata indicated they wished to clarify the nature and intent of the compact's termination and to propose a framework for renewed engagement. Vorathi's communications officer logged the request, assigned it a receipt number per standard procedure, and filed it. The Armada continued on its course and speed without acknowledgement. On day 7, a direct signal arrived at my intelligence station, addressed to me by name and post designation. They had done thorough research. They had identified which analyst raised the hullcracker flag, what I had found, when I had found it, and what I had recommended. The signal contained a formal expression of regret for the station losses, which they characterized as an operational complexity inherent to the compact's termination mechanism, and a personal request that I advocate for a diplomatic channel before the Armada reached Vorathi space. They cited my professional record. They suggested my judgment carried weight within command. Operational complexity. 94,212 operational complexities. I logged the communication received, appended a timestamp, flagged it for the post-action record, and closed the file. On day 9, I boarded a transit shuttle to the flagship Ironmark. Vorathi had requested my physical presence for the final approach. She offered no elaboration and I did not ask for it. I believe she wanted a witness who understood the full thread, from the first hullcracker reading through to whatever conclusion the Armada was about to provide. It is also possible she believed I had simply earned the right to watch, and that she was correct on both counts. The bridge of the Ironmark was quieter than I expected. 430 warships in coordinated formation generates an enormous quantity of continuous sensor data, and the crew managed it with the flat, practiced calm of people who had rehearsed this sequence until it required no deliberate attention. Officers spoke in short sentences. Screens updated continuously. The formation held its geometric precision across 12,000 kilometers with the kind of consistency that is only possible when every ship commander trusts every other one without needing to verify it in real time. Vorathi met me at the bridge entrance. She said nothing, which was correct. The Vorathi home system resolved on the main display as a dense field of orbital signatures, stations, relay platforms, the layered transit signatures of a functioning civilization's inner infrastructure. Their defense perimeter came online as the Armada crossed the outer boundary marker, which I had anticipated. 340 vessels of various classifications, which fell within my modeled range of 300 to 360. I noted this without anything resembling satisfaction. Being correct about a threat that has already destroyed everything you were working to prevent carries a quality that is nothing like satisfaction. 3 Vorathi command vessels broadcast on the emergency frequency in simultaneous transmission, demanding the Armada halt and identify its purpose. Vorathi listened to all 3 broadcasts in full. Then she nodded to her communications officer. He transmitted one file. The audio recording of the Vorathi transmission received at 0414 UTC on the day of the attacks. 1 word. 2 syllables. Common meridian frequency. Concluded. The Vorathi did not broadcast again. What happened in the following 91 minutes I will record with the precision I apply to every operational document, because this account will enter the formal record and the formal record demands accuracy above other considerations. The Meridian Armada did not conduct a ground operation. It did not land personnel, take prisoners, or engage civilian infrastructure. It engaged the Vorathi military perimeter, methodically, systematically, in the order established by the targeting sequence prepared during the 11-day transit, and dismantled it. 340 vessels. 91 minutes. The formation held throughout and did not vary from its geometric structure at any point during the engagement. When the perimeter action concluded, Vorathi transmitted a single communication to the Vorathi Civilian Administration. It contained the casualty documentation I had compiled, all 94,000, 212 names, with ages, assignments, times of death, and station designations. Each time of death fell within 20 seconds of the initial detonations, because the hole crackers had been positioned and synchronized for precisely that outcome. The document included station registry photographs. Personnel are photographed at intake as standard identification procedure, and I had requested the full registry image set from the database on day one of the transit, having concluded without being able to fully articulate why that they would be required when the time came. The transmission carried no header beyond a routing address, no demand,
No ultimatum.
no listed authority, no further communication of any kind. She sent them the names and allowed the names to speak. I had not slept in 31 hours at that point. I note this not as complaint but as context. My account of the 91-minute engagement is from sensor logs and bridge audio, not from continuous personal observation, and the logs are more reliable than I was. They are what I have used to construct this record. I watched the Vorathi inner perimeter go offline on the main display, not destroyed, powered down, which is a materially different statement. The civilian administration had reached its own conclusion, and the conclusion was the correct one. The Armada had not come to occupy Vorathi space or to negotiate the terms of a new arrangement. It had come to answer a specific act with a response calibrated to the scale of that act, and the response had been delivered completely. What the Vorathi chose to do with that answer in the months and years that followed was a question for a different category of analyst. My documentation of the response itself was complete. Verith found me at the forward viewport as the formation began its withdrawal, 430 ships pulling back through Vorathi space in the same geometric order they had entered it, steady and unhurried. She stood beside me for close to a minute without speaking. Then she asked what I was thinking about. I told her I was thinking about the letter from the Treaty Compliance Office, the framed one above my terminal. She asked what I planned to do with it now. I said I was going to take it down. She nodded once and returned to her station. I filed the post-action report from the Ironmark's intelligence annex that same evening. The summary notation section required a formal record of the analytical work that had preceded and enabled the operation, the hull cracker identification, the first submission and its outcome, the second submission, the staging preparations, the activation sequence, the transit window, and the engagement. I wrote it exactly as I had written every prior analysis, precisely, without editorializing, every figure sourced, every conclusion attached to its evidence chain, every date accurate. The final notation line read, "The compact concluded on its stated terms. The Meridian Armada concluded on ours." I transmitted the file to command, closed the terminal, and sat in the quiet of the annex for a few minutes. Not grieving, that had been done at 0407 UTC on the appropriate morning, in the appropriate way, for the appropriate duration. I had given it the full weight it was owed, and then I had done my job, and the job was finished. This was a different kind of quiet. The kind that settles at the end of a long piece of work when the work has been done correctly and there is nothing left to revise. 94,212 names. They had been answered.